Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining us today. As everyone is still getting signed in, we'll just go over a few housekeeping items. So this webinar will be recorded and we will email it to you shortly following the conclusion of today's session. So don't worry if you have to step away, if you miss something, if you want to watch it again, we will record this and email it to you shortly. Also, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, we'll be taking some time to answer those at the end of our time together today. So just feel free to pop those questions in the Q&A window within your webinar panel, and we will get to those at the end. If you do have additional questions following this webinar, or if we don't get to answering all of them, you can always reach out to info@jamf.com. Someone will get in touch with you quickly from Jamf, and you can make sure to get all of your questions answered there. So with that, let's get started. Again, welcome to another Jamf webinar. A very exciting topic today: what's new in Apple OS upgrades. New Apple operating systems have either been released in the case of iOS 16 or they are coming in the near future. And either way, we want you to be prepared to successfully manage the rollout of these to your organization, not only to empower your users with the latest and greatest, but also to take advantage of the security that comes with a new version. I just have to pause and say I love this new background image. I think it's so bright and beautiful. It just is kind of a ray of sunshine. So just had to throw that in there. So quick intros. My name is Kaylee Carlson. I'm in product marketing here at Jamf, focusing on our commercial enterprise space. And I'm joined today to help with live Q&A at the end of this session by Michael Devins, also in product marketing and handling our security solutions. So here's what our agenda looks like. We have a lot to cover here today. For those that might be new to OS upgrades, we'll be discussing same-day support from Jamf and what that means for you and your organization. We'll take a look at the biggest announcements from Apple's WWDC, the Worldwide Developer Conference that took place back in June, and touch on some of the key features that might impact your business. Then we'll fast forward to today, where Apple's already released iOS, and then coming up presumably in October, macOS Ventura along with iPadOS 16 will be released, and we'll just give you a little bit of an overview on what you can expect with each of those new versions. And then we'll wrap up our time today with some strategies for success. We'll break down some information and talk about the decisions you'll need to make to best roll out the new operating systems in your organization, as well as provide some resources that we have available to help make this OS upgrade season a successful one. So again, a lot of content here to cover, very exciting things already released from Apple and more to look forward to. So with that being said, let's jump into OS upgrades and talking about same-day support. So as I mentioned, WWDC occurred in June. This is the event where Apple announces what will be coming in macOS, iOS, iPadOS, and tvOS this fall. It's an important time of year for us as we prepare for the availability of these new operating systems and what comes with those. So before we get too deep into anything else, I think it's important to share our history of same-day support. At Jamf, we made a decision back in 2002 when our company was founded, before this graphic even begins, that we would focus on Apple. And every year, somebody asks us, are we going to broaden our focus? And consistently, we answer that, yes, we're always looking at other things, but we will maintain a focus on Apple. We are Apple first and Apple best. So same-day support of Apple operating systems has long been a strength of Jamf. It is a way that we can best serve you. And you can see here that ever since 2012, we have been delivering on same-day support, which means we have not delayed in compatibility and supporting those new Apple operating systems when they do become available. What does that mean for you? It means that you can make new versions available immediately to your end users if you so choose on the day that Apple does release those new operating systems, right? If you want to launch it immediately, you have the ability to do so because we have compatibility built into all of our Jamf products, which is a way, again, that we can serve you best if you are ready to move to Apple's new operating systems. Okay, so Apple has traditionally had a laser focus on the consumer, and with that consumer success, it's shifted that same focus on helping the enterprise and other types of organizations, such as education. Because Jamf is in lockstep with Apple, we are also working to grow Apple in the enterprise, which includes Jamf paying attention to and prioritizing strategic Apple initiatives and features. This has led to an evolution of what we mean when we say same-day support, to a more modern way of thinking about supporting Apple through what we call support, accelerate, and extend. There's a lot on this slide, but if you bear with me while we stop here for a few minutes, I'll step you through it, starting with that first box, support. This reflects exactly what we were just talking about on the last slide, Jamf supporting new Apple operating systems on the day they're released with every new version. Accelerate is about looking ahead and supporting Apple with features that are strategically important within the industry, ensuring that Jamf is making every possible effort to drive awareness and adoption of those features in the marketplace. And then finally, Extend is supporting key features from Apple by adding unique value to our products and solutions. For example, we took DEP and reimagined the enrollment experience to zero-touch deployment the way you know it today, which benefits, of course, both the admins and end users alike. So let's keep these three categories of support in mind here as we walk through the rest of this presentation. So we've talked about Apple same-day support and what an operating system season means to your organization. All of that in mind, I want to talk about Apple's WWDC, as this was the first time this year that we got a peek into what's coming from Apple. We'll talk more about what you can expect from the new operating systems in a minute, but let's also break into the major features that were announced across all devices. First up, declarative device management. This is a protocol where the configuration of the device can dynamically adapt to the state of the device over time without having to check in with the server. Previously only available for a user-enrolled iOS device, this year Apple has extended declarative device management to all platforms across all enrollment types, resulting in a more responsive inventory that will take minutes rather than the current verbose MDM polling process to identify changes to the device. We have a really great blog on jamf.com that talks all about declarative device management in more detail, so please do check that out and know that we plan to support this exciting feature in Jamf Pro very, very soon, so stay tuned. Apple is now providing MDM vendors with an improved way to attest that an iOS or iPadOS identifier, such as a UDID and serial number, is genuine and hasn't been altered or spoofed by an attacker. This is important because the UDID is the primary way that MDMs and other systems uniquely identify devices. Attestation certificates provide strong assurances about a managed device, such as serial number and software version, which gives confidence to admins that the device is authentic and does belong within their MDM system and that it is safe. Enrollment single sign-on builds on the SSOE configuration profile by tying a user to the single sign-on application. Here's how it works. A user would install an identity app onto their device so that during the enrollment process, the user signs in with their identity credentials. Once the user has signed in, the number of subsequent sign-ins required during the MDM enrollment process is reduced, and once enrolled in the MDM, the app remains installed and facilitates additional authentications without the user having to retype their credentials each and every time. This results in a much more streamlined experience for the user, not having to sign in with every application or resource that they would like to access. One thing to note here, Enrollment SSO does require support from a cloud identity provider. So at the time that a cloud IDP does support the workflow, Jamf will explore how we will extend and support Enrollment SSO as well, along with that identity provider. Managed per app networking. Apple is expanding their per app managed networking capabilities to include DNS proxies and web content filters for devices enrolled with user enrollment, meaning only network traffic initiated by managed apps is passed through DNS proxy, the web content filter, or both. A user's personal traffic stays separated and won't be filtered or proxied by an organization, just ensuring again that if a user is using a BYOD device, that they are able to keep their work content separate from their personal content. Rapid security response. This one is really great for admins from a security perspective. With the new operating systems, a new mechanism is being introduced to ship security fixes to users more frequently. This means admins will have the ability to patch their devices sooner without having to wait until the next major release, and it ensures that machines have the latest security updates needed to keep the device protected. And last but certainly not least, platform single sign-on. Similar to enrollment SSO, the Platform Single Sign-On extension builds on the SSOE configuration profile by tying the local user account on a Mac to the Single Sign-On application. From the macOS login window, the user is allowed to use their identity provider password to unlock that Mac. After the user has successfully logged in, the local account password is kept in sync with the cloud identity password, meaning users can access any resources gated by the IDP and the SSOE app without additional password prompts, again, creating a streamlined user experience to access Mac resources, reducing the friction of multiple logins. A similar note to enrollment SSO, there is that same requirement of support from a cloud IDP for platform single sign-on. Jamf will reevaluate platform SSO with a cloud identity partner as Apple gets closer to shipping macOS Ventura. All right, let's take a look at what's new with each operating system. The world's most popular operating system did not disappoint this year, with all new personalization features and more seamless ways to communicate and share. The keynote started off debuting the new personalization features for a user's lock screen, from a new gallery to new widgets to Apple collections. Users will enjoy making their iOS 16 iPhone their own with these new features. Available now with iOS 16, you can expect new features that include improvements to Safari and Mail, additional collaboration features for messages, updates to the Home and Health apps to name a few, as well as iCloud, shared photo library, and Freeform coming later this year. Apple also hinted at some exciting new CarPlay features that will be announced later next year. So we touched on most of these key features on the list here on the screen, but let's jump to passkeys. Passkeys are an authentication technology that helps solve security issues like vulnerable passwords or phishing. When a user signs into an app, they can add a passkey to that app's account. Once added, the user's device has a new cryptographically solid key for that account, which is stored in the iCloud keychain. This means the passkey will sync across all devices running iOS 16. Passkeys are an exciting technology in addition to device and patch management tools, endpoint protection, and web filtering technologies that all should work together in a layered approach to protect sensitive data for businesses. Similar to iOS 16, iPadOS 16 showcased several features to make iPad more personal and customizable. Coming soon with the release of iPadOS 16, you'll see many similar new features similar to iOS 16, such as improvements to Safari, Mail, and Messages, updates to the iPadOS Home app, and desktop class apps, as well as iCloud shared photo library and Freeform, again coming later this year. Stage Manager lets users work exactly how they want with the ability to resize windows, overlap windows, fast access to windows and apps, grouping apps together, and more. Families will also enjoy some new family sharing features to maintain their kids' privacy and protection when using iPad, such as an improved child account setup, device setup for kids, screen time requests and messages, and a family checklist. As in years past, iPad again will see the same exciting features as iOS when it comes to use in business or in the classroom, like managed device attestation, enrollment SSO, rapid security response, declarative device management and passkeys, and also remote authentication. The enhancements to remote authentication bypass the need for shared iPads to remotely authenticate every 7 days. With iPadOS 16, and any existing users of the shared device will only need to use local verification to get access. If an IT admin wants to continue to enforce a remote authentication, they still can set the number of days via the online authentication grace period key. Now moving into tvOS. We continue to see a demand for Apple TVs in industries like hospitality and hotels and healthcare and patient rooms and waiting rooms. So it's always a good idea to be up to date, even if Apple TVs might not be in your environment today. This year, Apple announced the ability to add multiple languages to Apple TV so that you can quickly switch input languages when entering text using the on-screen keyboard or change the display language. Buddy Controller allows you to play games on Apple TV with assistance from a friend by combining 2 game controllers for use as a single player. Last year, Apple showcased spatial audio for use with Apple TV, and they continue to build on that this year with support for personalized spatial audio. Users can use their iPhone with iOS 16 or later to create a spatial audio profile that improves sound on AirPods, AirPods Pro, or AirPods Max when used with Apple TV. And finally, my personal favorite that I know I'll be using on my Apple TV, My Sports. You can turn on My Sports in the Apple TV app to follow your teams on Apple TV, as well as across Apple News and other Apple apps on your Mac, iPhone, or iPad, so you never miss a moment on what's happening with your sports teams. The next iteration of macOS, coming soon, continues to redefine the look and feel of previous versions and also emphasizes better and more powerful ways to do the things you do most on Mac. Similar to iOS and iPadOS 16, new features include improvements to Safari and Mail, additional collaboration features for Messages, Stage Manager, a refreshed design to system settings, improvements to Mac Home, to name a few, as well as iCloud shared photo library and Freeform, again, coming later this year. We've touched on platform SSO and rapid security response earlier in the presentation, and we just hit on passkeys with iOS and iPadOS. But one additional notable feature I want to call out for Ventura is the ability to manage and disable universal control. Universal control, introduced with macOS Monterey, unites Mac and iPad for an enterprise-level work experience. Universal control lets you use a single mouse across Mac and iPad devices near each other, drag and drop files across the devices, or use multiple screens to be more productive than ever. Now with macOS Ventura, admins have the ability to manage or disable universal control in the event that they don't want information being shared between devices, maybe for security reasons. Now that you've heard about what's new with the operating systems and new features, let's talk about how you can prepare for success this OS upgrade season for your organization. If you're thinking about updating your operating systems, you've likely signed up for Apple's beta test program to begin testing and validating in your environment, which is an important step 1. Here's how Jamf can help you take it the rest of the way. If you're a Jamf Pro user, the first thing you can do to prepare and leverage Jamf Pro is to dive into smart groups. Scoping based on version is probably the easiest way to start. You can select less than and 16 to easily see every device in your ecosystem and what operating system version each device is running on. Since iOS 16 is out and available, it might be easiest to start there, but also adding iPhone to your search to get a list of every iPhone device that will need to be updated if you choose to do so. If you need extra time and want to test and validate across your ecosystem, you can certainly do that. You have the ability to delay OS upgrades for up to 90 days to take the time you need to ensure your environment is ready for the new operating systems. I'd also like to encourage you to plan and communicate across your organization. Your users might be Apple savvy users, so they may be ready for that new OS right away. Or you might have users that don't even realize that there's a new operating system available. Whatever mix of users you have, it's important to communicate with your teams before you either delay or make these upgrades available. If you have any questions on this, feel free to hop onto Jamf Nation, and we're more than happy to give you some pro tips there. Because iOS 16 is already available, let's touch on the options to upgrade. If you're ready to upgrade all of the iPhones in your environment, you should choose your deployment path either by using an MDM command to make it available or let your users do the updating on their own. If you want the user to do it, it's pretty easy to see that red badge for software updates in the Settings app. Most users have been through this on their personal devices, so it should be a pretty easy process for them. If you don't want to leave it up to your users to make sure they upgrade, you can leverage MDM to upgrade to iOS 16 by hopping into Jamf Pro and utilizing smart groups, as I just mentioned. If you decide that you aren't ready to upgrade quite yet, again, you have that 90 days to defer the update. So whether you're ready to enforce that update today or you want to delay that upgrade for up to 90 days, Jamf is on your side for either option. We can't wait to get our hands on all of the new operating systems, and rest assured, when Apple makes them available, Jamf will once again be ready with same-day support to ensure that you succeed with Apple in your organization. We have a number of resources available to help you with OS upgrade season. We want to leave you with our iOS and iPadOS upgrades guide for beginners, and a shorter version of a reference guide, the simplified iPadOS and iOS upgrade workflow one-sheet. These two resources are available today for iOS and iPadOS, and we'll be posting resources for macOS on the day that it releases. I'll drop both of these links into the chat, or you can always search for OS upgrades on our website and get all of the latest and greatest resources that we have available to you. So let's recap what we walked through today. Jamf has been offering same-day support of new Apple operating systems on the day they release, which means you can take advantage of upgrading to those new systems and feel confident that you can offer new operating systems to your users the day they become available if you choose. WWDC 2022 had some important key features that will continue to make Apple the best it can be within organizations. And Jamf will continue to explore how we can best support these features for you and your users, so stay tuned for more on what's next from Jamf. Operating Systems Overview. You heard about the key features and workflows that you can expect with each operating system and why they will matter to you and your users. And finally, we talked about how Jamf can help you with OS upgrade season and making the right choice for your environment and how to roll out new operating systems and when, as well as resources to help you get there. Thank you for tuning in today.